Hello, everyone. My name's Rock Wehrmann. I'm a piano player. I play with the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra and several other musical organizations throughout the Midwest. I'm going to talk today about the minor blues and specifically about stolen moments. The song itself is not written in the blues form. The song itself, if I remember correctly, is a 16 bar form. But when we get to the improvising section in the middle of the arrangement, now I have to admit I haven't seen the exact arrangement that you guys have been looking at. But in the middle, when we get to the improvising section, we call it the blowing section. It becomes minor blues, which is a 12 bar form that you can see if you look at the part. We'll talk a little bit about what it is that the rhythm section should do for this, because that's where I live. And because the rhythm section has responsibilities that the rest of the band really doesn't have. It's quite possible on this chart, I know it exists on many other charts, that you are called on to provide musical decisions that aren't written on the page. In the improvising section, piano, bass, they may just have chords. And based on that information, you make decisions about what you're going to play and how much, how little you're going to play, what notes you're going to use. And in order to do this, I know you've heard it from many people other places, but it's absolutely true. The most important thing you have to do is listen to each other. For the purposes of this discussion, let's assume that the rhythm section consists of bass, drums, piano, possibly guitar, sort of an auxiliary instrument, and then other auxiliary instruments like percussion instruments or even vibraphones, things like that. You have to pay attention to what the other people in the rhythm section are doing and almost on a continual basis adjust what you do so that the overall sound coming out of the rhythm section is good and acceptable. And as I say, the best thing that you can do is to listen to the other players. Pay attention to what they're doing. And once you hear that, the next very, very important thing that you have to do is to collaborate, cooperate with each other, which means many things, but in general, paying attention to what everyone else is playing and not duplicating what they're doing. In order to do this, let's talk a little bit about the jobs of each of the members of the rhythm section. The bass player, the job is fairly apparent. You provide primary harmonic and rhythmic indication on the downbeat at the beginning of each measure. At the beginning of every chord's lifetime, you play the root of that chord. If the chord on the page says C minor 7, you play C. And throughout the lifetime of that chord, you can play other notes that are in the chord. You can play a walking line. I think Aidan Plank, an absolutely delightful bass player, has spoken about this. The responsibilities of the drums are primarily to keep time, but also to add color. The cymbals and the sounds of the different drums will add lots and lots of color to the overall arrangement. And it's more than just hitting things on a certain beat. A drummer will make a choice to say, at this spot, I'm going to play just a cymbal. It's going to have that high, that ringing sound, but there's going to be no bottom end. Another spot, he'll say, I'll play just the bass drum, and it'll do sort of the opposite. Lots of bottom end, but nothing up here. And I think Jim Rupp has spoken to that, and I dare not try and improve on what he undoubtedly said. But in terms of what piano players do, we provide harmonic information. We provide extended harmonic information. I'm going to take just a second. You've heard this before, but for instance, I would bet you a fair amount of money that the first chord in the improvising section of the blues is C minor 7. The root of that chord is C, and then the chords that we usually use are called tertiary chords, which means that you skip every other note. So the distance between notes in a chord is described as a third. So the C minor 7 would be C, E flat, G, B flat. The second bar will probably be F minor 7, which is F, A flat, C, E flat. You look at the scale of the root of the chord. C minor 7, you look at the C minor scale, and you play 1, 3, 5, 7. You go up to the number that's there. That provides a harmonic bed for soloists to play over. Guitarists do largely the same thing in terms of figuring out what the actual pitches are in the notes that they play. So if we're collaborating in the middle of playing in the rhythm section, we're listening to each other, and because it's easiest for me, let me speak in terms of what a piano player listens for. We listen and make sure that the bass player is giving us that fundamental information. The root of the chord is on the downbeat. Good. The drummer is providing time and color. Good. The guitar player is the guitar player playing at the same time that you're playing. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Not bad, but there are better ways to do things. If you think about it, the guitar player and the piano player in the rhythm section do essentially the same thing. The sounds of the instruments, of course, are different. And speaking as a piano player, of course, the piano is infinitely superior. The fact is that the piano player can very easily play more than the 6 notes that can come out of a guitar. So, in terms of listening and collaborating, what do? The first thing is the guitar player and the piano player don't have to both play all the time. You can play one chorus, one set of this 12-bar pattern, and it can be one or the other. Piano for 1 or 2 choruses, and maybe when a new soloist starts, if the first one was the alto sax playing a solo, and then maybe it's a trombone solo. When the trombone solo starts, the piano drops out, the guitar comes back in. Another reason for both instruments not to always play at the same time is because when we get into the concept of extensions, which I will in a minute, which are extra notes that you add to chords, there's no guarantee at any given moment that the piano player will make the same decisions about what extra notes to add to the chord as the guitar player does. So sometimes those, as we get into really complex extensions, the more complex, the more interesting, but the more potential there is for clash. So, generally speaking, guitar and piano don't play at the same time. Listen to each other, listen to the entire rhythm section, listen to the sound of what's going on, and not just piano, everybody. One of the first things you should be listening for is, am I redundant? Now, that doesn't mean totally redundant, but is there a part of my playing that's being covered by one of the other instruments? Am I trying to be really rhythmic in my playing when the drums are over there doing that exact job and doing it better, frankly, than I could at the piano? Rhythm is the drummer's job. Again, speaking from the piano, am I playing great big chords in my left hand, down low on the piano. Those are the same notes that the bass player will be playing. And sometimes you may play something that just doesn't fit with a note that he plays down there. And believe me, that stuff doesn't sound good. Trust me when I tell you this. So we listen and we collaborate. And during the soloing, this is something, if you can, it's a good thing. It doesn't have to be. For instance, if it's a trumpet solo and he's playing up very high, don't play up high on your instrument. That's where he is. Give him the space to move around. By the same token, if it's a baritone sax solo and he's or she is way down low, move up on the keyboard a little bit. I guess it would be this way. But play the chords a little higher. And that way, there's no chance of clashing with the solo instrument, which is the one that everybody's going to be paying the most attention to. So you want another one of the jobs of the rhythm section is to make the soloist sound as good as possible. Now, in terms of extensions to chords, you'll note, as I said, it's sort of an every other note, the tertiary construction of chords. So you'll see a C minor 7. You won't see a C minor 8, but you will see a C minor 9. And that's pretty much what you think it is. It's the notes from the C minor 7, C, E flat, G, B flat, the 7th, and then we add 9, which is D. Depending on what's going on, you'll see chords written as C minor 11, C minor 13, and then you have to just do some calculating. A C minor 13 would be C, E flat, G, B flat, D, F, and A. Now, if you look at it, that's every note in the C minor scale, but it's arranged out in a chord. So very complex, very interesting. And again, don't throw every extension on every chord, because if the guitar player is doing the same thing, it's what we talked about. There's going to be some conflict. So think of those extensions, 9, 11, and 13. Think of them as Tabasco sauce. Think of them as wasabi. They're wonderful. They're tasty. They're great to enjoy. But if that was the only thing you had, you'd get tired of it pretty fast. So I've got on the sequencer here an example of the minor blues. And I'll play it through once, and then I'll add something like a solo line on it, so you can sort of hear what we're talking about. I'm playing some rhythms on the piano part. There's not a guitar part on here. But I'm not going crazy because the drummer's doing some other stuff. And here's some solo stuff. Now this is pre-recorded, so that piano player can't do the thing I talked about, can't collaborate in real time with the soloist, the vibe thing that I just played. That's a thing that only happens when players are playing together in real time. They can listen to each other and they can adjust their playing to make things the best it can be. So let me sum up. Listen to the other members of the rhythm section. Collaborate, cooperate, which basically means don't be redundant. In many cases, you can't have a conversation with the other player and say, here's what I'm going to do. No, you do it in your playing. You make a change in your playing, and you hope that the other person hears it and understands and reacts accordingly. And as a general rule of thumb, piano players and guitar players should not play together at the same time, unless it's like the biggest part of the arrangement and they want that just huge sound of both instruments coming at you at the same time. And rhythm section players should know their jobs. The bass player provides primary, fundamental rhythmic information, harmonic information, and very important rhythmic information. A bass player is the guy you look to if the band is dragging. A drummer provides rhythmic information and color from the instruments. Piano and guitar provide the harmonic bed, the harmonic background that the soloists can play over. So my advice to the guitar players and the piano players is to go in and look at the chords that are on the page, figure those out, and I give you my permission. You are absolutely allowed to improve on those chords. If it says C minor 7, which in the blues form, minor blues form, it's going to be a lot. Look at minor 9s, look at minor 11s. By the time you get into 13, it's pretty dangerous territory, but there may be a place. Try it, and if it sounds good, use it. Don't overplay. There are 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 6 of you. In most cases, things will sound better if you play less. It's counterintuitive, but that's how the rhythm section works. I hope this has been of some help to you. If you have more questions, please get in touch with Scott Garlock at the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra, and he will find somebody to answer all your questions. Again, hope this helped. Thanks very much. Bye.